Hey everybody! In this video I'll be showing an interesting DIY method of underlying your upholstery that uses cheap landscape fabric. This backing fabric not only keeps your insulation in the frame, but also hides both the frame and insulation from any final upholstering fabric you use. For example, the jute cloth I like to finish the frames with has an open enough mesh that you can distinctly see the frame inside the fabric after upholstering. So with this landscape fabric, you get a blank slate to put any fabric you'd like over it. Alternatively, you can use a nicer backing fabric and completely wrap the frame like you see here, or you could just use backing fabric on the back side of the panel if the main fabric you're going to upholster with won't show the frame through it. I've found that having an underlying layer can help soften your edges and make your final upholstery a little easier. In general, I would not recommend nailing or stapling this underlying step, as any nails that are sticking up after this step will snag and show in your final upholstery. So I use spray adhesive to adhere this layer of fabric. I've found the landscape backing to be particularly forgiving for a few reasons that I'll show examples of in this video. A nicer fabric may also work similarly with these little tricks, but the low cost of this material means mistakes are not as potentially costly. Let's move on to tools needed. So you'll need a sharp knife to trim the fabric with, preferably one with a replaceable blade, as the adhesive will gum up and you will need to replace or clean the blade fairly often. You'll also need your backing fabric. I'm using a landscape fabric that should be readily found at any home improvement store. I actually found that the cheapest fabric was the one that was least opaque. So if possible, I'd recommend trying to assess the opacity of the fabric before purchase. I try to show that difference in opacity here. The more expensive fabric is the one on the right. The type of spray adhesive you use is likely not all that critical. But I would recommend finding one with a longer setting time, that way you have a larger window of time to tweak and work with your fabric. A well-ventilated area is recommended. I even go outside to spray the adhesive to also not get the floor or workbench sticky. Turns out, tiny fibers of glass are not great for your body, so gloves, a long sleeve shirt, and even glasses and a mask would be recommended, especially if you're doing a lot of frames. And as a final note, a large flat surface will make the process a lot easier. Now for the actual application of the fabric. I set up a fancy bit of equipment to place my frame on for spraying the adhesive. I bring the adhesive back with me inside in case I need a little touch-up spray. I then place my frame on my already spread out fabric, trying to not have too many wrinkles in the fabric, but not worrying about it too much. Then press it down to keep it snug. Trim off the excess fabric and then flip it over. That it's flipped over, I press the fabric into the adhesive and work out the wrinkles some. I then cut off all the remaining excess fabric. I'm right-handed, so you may notice that I rotate the frame to meet my hand and cut in the same direction all the way around the frame. I angle slightly to the inside of the frame while cutting. A final little touch-up reveals a spot that isn't glued well, so a quick hit of glue sorts that out. Now that you have a back piece to catch your insulation, let's slice the insulation down to size. Insulation is designed for 2x6 studs and 16-inch stud centers. But it's also designed for an 8-foot wall, so I'll have to slice it into 2 chunks to fit my pair of frames. I have a nice insulation cutting knife that I often use when I do these frames, but I use the same knife I used to trim the fabric to cut the insulation in this clip. So the insulation cutting knife is not really required. Bit of a hack job, but no big deal. Now, go ahead and tuck in your insulation, but resist the urge to pack it in. Packing it in will hamper its absorptive properties quite a bit. The backing fabric and upholstery will hold it all in to form just fine without you needing to stuff it. Now we're ready to apply the rest of the backing fabric. Back outside for a good coating of adhesive, spraying any exposed wood you see left. Following a similar method to before, lay out your frame and lightly press down on your fabric. This time giving yourself plenty of excess fabric so you can wrap it up the sides. I like to do my 2 long sides first, pulling and pressing the fabric into the frame. Being absolutely wrinkle-free here is not required. I found you can have quite a bit of wrinkle before it hampers the final upholstery. But what final upholstery you choose may affect how much wrinkle tolerance you have. I then like to trim the excess from my long side, but be careful to cut at a right angle to your edge, so that you have a relatively straight line for folding up your other side. Little easier shown than described. This moment shows kind of what I'm trying to describe with these corner cuts. Flip and press the fabric like you did the other sides. If you could see past my elbow here, you'll see I came up quite a bit short on the length of this side. No big deal. Actually gives us a great example of how flexible and forgiving this fabric can be. After a little trim, I'll show you how I mend that chunk. Pretty simple, just toss up a little scrap of fabric, then glue and trim it. Get this last little section cleaned up and show you one more trick. Sharpie goes a long way to hiding any last little bits of bright frame poking out. Just go over the frame in a well-lit area, and then you can be confident that no frame will show after you're done upholstering. So in the next video, I'll show you the final step of making your absorption frames. It will be a similar video to this where I show real-time upholstery with the hand stapler. And at the end of that video, I'll say a bit more on how to hang these frames as well. Any feedback is much appreciated, and you know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe. Thanks.